I wouldn't know, of course.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday meeting of the VOCC. Glad to see all your faces. We'll start with the pledge if you want to join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Commissioner Mortensen, the minutes.
Good morning, everyone. As usual, I reviewed the minutes of the activities last week and I move to approve those minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Any corrections, comments, anything on it? Not seeing any. Call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We'll run down through the consent agenda. Call for bids, on-call services. There's been a change in law and it's affected the way we do business on small projects that need to get done quickly. So at this point in time, we have to set up these on-call services with different trades. I think Sean, you said about 11 different trades, plumbers and all those different things that we'll have set up on this on-call bid. So it would shorten we don't have to send everyone out to notice and keep the time short. They've changed the law. We used to be able to just have a contract when it was a small enough bid, but now we need to do it a different way. So we have these people on call, and that's what this call for bids is. They'll be going out to places and they'll give us some bids. Request for a proposal for entities interested in operating a coordinated entry access point. We haven't put out a request for proposal and stated either 4 or 5 years, 4 years at least. And we've had a couple entities. Right now we have 3 that do coordinated entry. And Gina can correct me if I'm wrong, but coordinated entry to access some of the services that the state offers for others. Some of them you have to go through this coordinated entry process to be evaluated for those services. So it's we have 3 that do it right now. We've had a couple other ask about it. So Health Department is putting out a request for proposal that'll go out and we'll see what we get back. It doesn't, we talked a little bit yesterday, are we looking at an increased cost? And really not. We get a certain amount from the state to do this, and it's a reimbursement deal. As they help people, then they bill us and we reimburse. In the last few years, we have not spent the dollars that are out there. So my guess is it's not really. Some entities that do it now may see decrease because they'll use another entity, but I don't think overall it really is going to have much effect.
So, Mr. Chairman, for those who might not be aware, coordinated entry is for people seeking assistance because they're homeless. And so the coordination is to make sure they're evaluated, and then the proper agency is then suggested for whatever condition that they're confronting as a homeless person. So.
Okay, so those are the 2 call for bids we have going out.
So on that coordinated entry.
Is your mic on?
Hold on. Okay, there we go. So how busy are these guys? I mean, are they seeing 10 people a day, 20? None?
I don't think it's that busy. Gina would have better.
Morning, Gina.
Hi, Tim. Gina James, Health and Human Services. We see there's about 1,000 to 1,200 individuals each year that connect with one of these coordinated entry access points, and they do only reimburse us for the coordinated entry activities that they work on. And so what we reimburse for their time depends on how many people come to their entity and are asking for coordinated entry services.
So, I mean, what happens when you go to something like this and you're homeless? I mean, what's the end goal? Do they looking to put them over at Hopeless Village or, what do they call that again? Camp Hope, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Hope Village. They will talk to the individual about what their housing situation currently is. They will review with them. There's a whole list of resources locally that individuals can connect with. If they are currently unsheltered, they will talk about different shelter options that we have in town and encourage them to connect with those options. So they'll go through kind of this list of resources that may be able to help them in their situation and encourage the individual to connect with those resources.
Does this resource apply only to homeless? It's just anybody walks in and, or do they have to be homeless?
No, anybody can walk in and ask. If you are literally homeless, there's this additional step that we take with entering the data in HMIS, and most of the referrals that we're able to do that are required to come through coordinated entry are for unsheltered individuals. So
Yeah,
that's
I
how we,
think of coordinated entry as sort of a triage.
sure, yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Gina.
The one thing I'm not sure of is, what is what would make an agency interested in becoming
An access point. If individuals often are reaching out to them or saying, we're homeless, what do we do? How do we need help? They may be interested in being an access point themselves. I know this came up with CAP because everyone who is on HIN and interested in a HIN housing referral has to go through coordinated entry to be eligible for that referral. So if people go to CAP, then CAP says you have to go to coordinated entry and they're not an access point. So they're sending people around. So I think there's interest in that sense if people are coming to their door asking specifically, and then they have to send them somewhere else.
So
for that.
prior to being an access point, they would have been providing that in a perverted definition of pro bono?
They would, hopefully, I hope all agencies will, encourage individuals to connect with resources that are currently available in the community. And I think agencies do that. This,
Which lets them get paid for it.
right.
Okay.
The difference is that you have individuals who are looking for housing, and for the programs that are required to take referrals, we end up sending people around to make sure they're connecting with coordinated entry so they get entered in to be eligible for a referral.
So it's not surprising that the agencies that are doing coordinated entry right now are those who do have a lot of access to people with those kinds of needs.
Mhm.
For example, Community House,
Mhm.
that's our #1 provider of shelter services. Family Health Center, constantly dealing with people who are homeless, needing medical aid. And the third one is the Emergency Support Shelter for victims of domestic violence. Almost by definition are homeless. So other agencies that are interacting with homeless right now might find it advantageous financially to get access to coordinated entry. If they're already seeing those folks, they're giving lots of advice anyway.
Mhm.
So for example, you mentioned CAP with the HEN program. That's probably the second largest provider of services to the homeless. Again, pretty tightly controlled by the state. The state has to define who's
Mhm.
eligible. And then you find out, then you go to get the supplies with HEN, and they tell you, oh, but you got to go someplace else to do coordinated entry. So
Yeah.
eliminating barriers, I guess.
Go ahead.
So just a little clarification. So under coordinated entry, I presume for these 1,200 individuals a year, a lot of them are repeats in some way or another. I have been through it once before. So there should be some history with that these agencies or someone would have. And then, of course, you say access points. So there's other access points. So there's got to be duplication in the system that should be some way or another coordinated or available for a coordinated entry person or agency.
Yeah, so if someone comes into any of the access points and they get to the stage where they're entering the data in the state system, any of the access points will be able to see that that person is already entered, or if they've already had their screening done, they'll be able to see that. So they wouldn't be doing it again. If they need to update some information, they can do that really quickly, but they don't need to, go through the whole process again. And then all of the information, all the data from all the access points is information that we access at Health and Human Services, and we're the ones that look to make a referral. So we'll keep track of who's already been referred. And so they won't come up for a referral again, for example, if they end up showing back up in the system and stuff like that. So there's ways to look at who's coming in, who's connecting multiple times and things like that.
So I'm presuming, hopefully, that when you gather this for our commissioners here and for the constituents of the county, of the 1,200, whatever that is, there are some things that you can say, well, these have been repeats, these are new, some of these are from Portland or Vancouver or whatever. There should be some data that are shared with of our community that who we're servicing.
Sure. I have a report from 2023 I'm happy to share that covers some of that demographic information about who's connecting, just the kind of the basic demographic information.
The foundation of that is this coordinated entry program then?
For coordinated entry, yeah. Who's connecting with coordinated entry, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Morning, gentlemen. Morning, Gina. I just have a quick question. I want to make sure I understand this. So the request for proposal is for coordinated entry access points, more of them. Do they all offer the same program, the same service?
Yes, it's a standardized assessment process.
So it's the people who are beyond the coordinated entry that offer the different services that they direct them to.
Right, so coordinated entry is sort of about gathering some information, referring to mainstream services as needed. And then beyond that, we at our department, we will look at when the programs that are required to take referrals from coordinated entry have a program opening, they reach out to us and say, hey, we need 2 referrals for our program, for our housing program. And then we will sort through the data and we'll send them 2 referrals.
So do we need more access points because the 3 that we have aren't able to handle the load?
So Commissioner Dahl mentioned the cost. We're not looking to increase the cost, but if there's a way to increase the access, and I brought up the example of not having to send people from one place to another. There's a lot of confusion that happens when you have to do that with individuals and they kind of get lost in where do I have to go now? And so we haven't sent a request out for 4 or 5 years. So we want to just kind of reevaluate who our access points are. Is this the best way to have this set up? And do we want to look at additional access points?
Okay, yeah, the reason I ask is because if of the confusion, it would make sense to me that if we only had one access point that everybody went to and then they don't have to send them all over the place and then we just deal
Yeah.
with one.
We used to have that model with just one. We have found it beneficial to have multiple, and partly because some of these access points are where people already are or they naturally go. Some places prefer to go to one over the other for different reasons or different experiences they've had. So we have found it beneficial to have a couple access points in that sense, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we don't, if we get, say, a dozen interested parties, we don't have to open a dozen.
No.
We can sit and make a determination of what makes sense
Mhm.
and what would be the best one. So it's not, this will find out who has interest, and
Mhm.
then it's our job to try and whittle down to who makes the most sense.
Yeah.
So when we first started the coordinated entry, we had a recommendation from a coordinating committee on the homeless task force. back in the day. And they recommended a brand new agency that was kind of new to the scene, set up to do specifically services for the homeless. That was a group called Love Overwhelming, and everybody had to be referred to Love Overwhelming. So there were a lot of requests from other agencies to have that access point, and we certainly agreed to do that. That's when we moved to the 3. And interestingly, Love Overwhelming was not allowed to continue, or they didn't bid. I'm not quite sure how that went.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Gina.
Yep.
Agreements, contracts, bid awards. We have an interlocal agreement with Wahkiakum County for coroner services. This past legislative session, they passed RCW where some of the smaller counties have prosecutor / coroner. Your prosecutor is also your coroner. They're not going to allow that anymore. So these smaller counties that had that, Wahkiakum was one, their options were these smaller counties, they'll have to decide to work with another county, a larger county that has the service, or they'll have to make the decision to do the expense and have a coroner in addition to the prosecutor. The prosecutor can't fill both roles anymore under Washington State RCW. So Wahkiakum is one of those that are affected by that, and they've been working with our local coroner, and that's where this interlocal agreement comes from. And I know Commissioner Mortensen, you had some questions on this?
I do. Do you want me to hold it until you're all done, or this is good enough?
I think it's.
Okay, I'll go
Yeah.
ahead. So I was hoping that Christie or the coroner would be on board on what would be page 4, number 4, item 2 of the agreement lists some costs, and I want, I said page 4, I should have, yeah, page 4. It lists some costs, and I don't recall them. I recall higher costs, and I also am concerned, we have a fixed price contract which has a cap on it with Dr. Nelson. He's our on-call guy, and I don't know how we are going to deal with Wahkiakum needing a pathologist. You know, do we chew into our allowance or not? I should preface it, by the way, I in no way am trying to say anything negative about this contract or Wahkiakum, because I think it's really good for us to help them as we
Yeah.
can. So that's not the issue, just some clarity. Then another issue is everything we do has administrative costs. So I don't see anything on here. And so the numbers look a little on the lower side than I recall. And that's item 2 on page 4. And item number 4, it says the fees in this agreement are subject to change by mutual agreement of the parties. I'm just curious, how do you manage that? Because if our fees go up, and Wahkiakum says we can't afford it, so we won't pay the higher fees, can we refuse the service, or what exactly is? And I don't know how that wanted to be managed. So I was hoping to get answers there.
So if you turn to the previous page, at the very bottom, it says that there's a flat annual fee of 5,000.
Yeah,
And we talked about that yesterday, and that was supposed to cover the administrative costs.
correct.
Yeah. okay.
Correct. So what we see doesn't have anything in addition attached to it.
Right.
It's just that clarity I'm looking for. And then
Yeah.
how we manage the contracts, because we know that the pathologists are in very high demand, and somehow we managed to get some very nice contracts. I'd hate to have to go back out and find another pathologist.
Yeah, I might have looked at this, I think I looked at this a little different. I looked at it as, I know our autopsies are more expensive, but I didn't I looked at it as just the services of the coroner going out and doing that, and the autopsies is separate. And I don't know if that's correct or not. That's just the way
Yeah, I might be being sloppy here with pathologists, pathologists. I know that the coroner has to do autopsies, which typically will include pathology, and I lumped those all together, maybe improperly. But that's why I was just asking as
Yeah.
opposed to anything.
And I think the plan is designed for the first year to find out what the actual costs are. They had to start with some place. Then after a year, they'll true it up for the actual costs that they keep. That's why they have that flexibility on adjusting the costs
Yeah,
based on what it actually costs them during this first year. Because you're right, we don't really know exactly how much it's going to cost.
yeah, or what are the unintended consequences?
we're trying, but we haven't been.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
because of what I said earlier about we want to help Okaikam, I'm not going to object to this. It's just something we should understand.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Then the last thing on consent agenda is just correspondence. Retirement letter to Denise Kramer, congratulating her 31 years of service in the assessor's office. And that is the consent agenda.
In terms of correspondence and letters and notices, we should probably let people know that probably next week we'll have a letter appointing the large industry representative to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. That's been vacant for some time. It's a representative from one of the paper companies.
Pleasure on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve today's consent agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. One motion item.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I did earlier contact the auditor there, wondering whether elections needed to, or did want to say anything. I don't know whether your time commitment is such you have to get back down or not. I leave it up.
You only have one motion item.
Okay. You know how loquacious this young lady is.
So good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. We have one motion item in front of you today, which is a request to approve the local agency agreement supplement number 1 and federal aid prospectus for the countywide guardrail project. The supplement will add an additional $509,200, bringing the total up to $537,200 for this project. This is a federal aid safety project, and this is the project where we are going out and adding guardrail in new locations. The goal of these safety grants is the state and federal goal of target zero of trying to help eliminate injury and deaths due to road accidents.
I think we talked yesterday at our workshop about how about replacing the damaged ones, and that is a different program. It's on our dollar. Our local dollars go for the repair.
Yes, our local dollars go for the repairs, and we are currently preparing that contract to go out for bid. Also, winter is a good time to be repairing contracts because doing repair and new contracts because they're not busy with large construction projects. So they gives the contractors a good filler also.
And when guardrails are damaged, if it's an accident that's reported, we can do cost recovery.
Correct. When there's a guardrail that's damaged, based on whatever the current price we have for guardrail, we submit a bill to the driver and their insurance company and try to recover our costs to replace those guardrails.
Thanks.
I've got to ask you one engineering question. I assume there are specs on the guardrail that say how much energy they have to absorb before they yield and how they yield?
Yes, there's a whole standards, and this is what one of the things they use test dummies in certain cars. So there's a MASH standard, which I forget what the acronym stands for, and they are constantly upgrading them. Some of the new guardrail is actually changes to end sections because you want them to break away in a certain way so that it doesn't impale the driver. So the end sections are constantly being tested and updated. And we work when we're doing some of these to replace some of our old end sections, which are not to the current standards.
And there's a big difference between crashing into a Jersey wall and into a
Guardrail, yes. And the guardrail and the Jersey barrier were both originally designed. It's more to keep you, to help. I don't know why they use the term guardrail. It should be guide rail because it's supposed to guide you back onto the road. That's why a lot of times you'll see them broken and they're just kind of belled out. That is exactly what a guardrail is supposed to do. It's supposed to prevent you from going over the edge and push you back onto the road.
Like bumper guards
Thank
in
you.
bowling.
Yes, it's like doing duck pin bowling with your bumpers.
That's the same technology that's been around for 100 years almost, isn't it?
For the guardrails,
Yeah.
yes. And they're constantly making changes. So
Yeah, because the bumper makes me think, could we do a better job? Like suppose it were flypaper and the guy just stuck his car there. Anyhow, Mr. Chairman, would you like a motion?
Sure.
I move that we approve the prospectus and local agency agreement for county-wide guardrail project as has been presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 thank you.
Yeah, the only thing, you ever see the ones on the freeway and there's the cable? You know,
Yeah.
want to know what motorcycle people call those?
Yes,
Cheese graters.
yeah.
We don't like them.
No.
Yeah. Anyway, we have Carolyn here. Do you want to talk, because we had a question on election, and we do have, I think Dana and Christie, and we'll
Get back.
pass those.
We can do that at another time too. For
Are you
that
sure?
matter. Oh, yeah, yeah, because
Okay.
it's already approved.
Okay, good, thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Carolyn Fundingsland, Cowlitz County Auditor. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. I've brought a lot of percentages, turnouts, comparisons, but what I am guessing is on everybody's mind is ballot box security. So just to start, there's a lot that I personally don't disclose when I'm talking in these meetings. I came to an earlier meeting, and if you were here, you may remember that Department of Homeland Security was warning us that the online chatter is to destroy our ballot boxes, and they were instructing them on the ways to make these incendiary devices and how to do it. So we have been prepared. You should know that they're constantly monitoring those online chats. And we did know about it. I shared it in this meeting. And for that reason, we've done some things with our schedule in elections with ballot box collection. Everybody knows we pick up ballots every day. Well, in this election, we're picking up now 7 days a week, some boxes twice a day. We're trying to narrow down the window of opportunity for bad actors. And in addition, I've been working with all the chiefs and the sheriffs in all the cities and county. I'm in contact with them almost daily, actually. They all have additional patrols on our boxes. And I have to say thank you to our own county services. It really does take a village. Currently, IT and Public Works have jumped to our aid. My goal is to get cameras on all of the boxes, but you wouldn't believe the details that are bogging down that effort. But what I can come up with is something similar to a game cam, and they're being installed today. So, I mean, overnight they were on it. So thank you to those departments.
I was just thinking about another possibility with, for protection. And once the ballot's in the ballot box and it is somehow eliminated, fused, or destroyed, you don't know who put the ballot in there in the sense of, did my vote count or not count? I imagine ballot boxes in the future may actually have a scanner in there. So once it slips through the lip, it's got a picture of it.
You are absolutely right. In fact, there are vendors that have already created specs of those devices. Think of it as similar to one of those red box DVD devices, very similar. However, every solution comes with its own challenges. Now you're talking a very significant investment in each of these mandatory cities for drop boxes. So if it's no longer just a hunk of steel that we're placing, now it's a kind of an expensive piece of technology that we need to figure out how to protect. But yes, you are absolutely right. There are currently models being built.
And in addition to what you just described, one of the problems is, what do you do with the data? If it's in the box and the box is destroyed, you haven't done anything. So you've got to communicate the data out. How do you do that? You do it through RF. How robust is that? Well, you can make it robust to the point where it is jammed in some way, or somebody puts a Faraday cage on the thing, and next thing you know, you don't have anything. So you're right, it's got a lot of problems.
Every solution has its own problem.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot of calls, concerned voters wanting to revert back to voting in person, and this wouldn't be an issue. And what I would like to share is that they have their own problems. So the technique, there's bad guys everywhere. They're all around us. We live in a different environment now. And in the polling locations, what they're doing is swatting. That's the new, I hate that I even know what that word means. Swatting is overwhelming our responders with bomb threats. So you take a polling location and you call in bomb threats, and you've now successfully interrupted the voting process. There isn't a perfect method, but each has its own challenges. And something that I also haven't shared with everybody, because we don't like to give a roadmap for bad actors, but it did hit the media. Our ballot boxes are equipped with fire suppressant units. So the ballots that burned in Clark County, it would have been a lot worse without the fire suppression units. So, right now, and Clark County had cameras on their boxes. If you didn't see the news, we've identified the car. We have a description, and it was the same car in all 3 attempts, the 2 Vancouver attempts and the Oregon. So they're hot on his heels. So there are also devices out there that detect any type of tremors that we're looking into. So if there was any kind of, somebody ran into it, any kind of shaking, basically, we would get a text alert to know that something was going on. We're also looking into those.
How are we doing with the returns now?
You know, I feel a little better with returns. I was pretty disgusted last week. We were lagging behind when you compare this election to the 2020. We had gotten 10% behind in returns. And as of yesterday, in 2020 compared to yesterday here, we are currently at a 35%, and in 2020, we are at 41. So we closed the gap a little bit, just 6% behind. I'm hoping to continue to see that gap close, and we see the same 84-ish% turnout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Just let me know if you have any other questions.
Anything, I will touch on this real quick only because it surprised me. I was at Castle Rock City Council last evening. And our building and planning was there, by the way. We're working on a contract with Castle Rock to do their work instead of having to, they use a firm, I think, out of Olympia now. So anyway, that might be changing. But they had to return, they had a grant for 700,000 that was to do some improvements to their boat ramp. And had gone through the study phase, and last night they had to vote to return that money because they were told by the, and they were told by the another letter agency, the National Oceanographic, whatever, that they would not be able to build there because of, it would imperil chum salmon.
NOAA?
Okay,
yeah, they have.
And the only reason I bring it up, and I don't know if their reasons are legitimate or not, I don't know that much about the project, but the fact that you have all these letter agencies that get involved with decisions in Cowlitz County, Washington, and all over, it just, if it drives me crazy. I hope it drives you crazy. It ought to, because it's insane. It's insane.
There may be another ramification to that too, which is classic. NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency, began long ago, and I always thought about it as just applying to the oceans. Well, talk about creep.
Yeah.
We're only 150 miles off the ocean.
Now they're
here.
in the Cowlitz River up at Castle Rock, along with Department of Ecology, Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service, Army Corps.
So that is the agency that is charged under federal rules and regulations for enforcing the Endangered Species Act for salmon.
Yeah.
So that's the connection.
Yeah.
And it's part of the Department of Commerce because salmon is a commercial fishery. So
You have,
There's always a reason.
yeah, and I'll just opine for a minute. You know, we're concerned about our elections. We want the right people in there that are gonna do what we think, whichever side thinks the right, and it's important. Right? Elections are important. But you need to, I would tell you, you need to be more concerned about these agencies that you have no control over, that can put their thumb on you in a heartbeat and you can't vote them out. You can't do any of that stuff. I would just say pay attention to that stuff, but it just is, they're everywhere. It's crazy.
in the 1980s, when I was learning about all this business, we of course had to deal with the aftermath of the eruption of Mount St. Helens and a tremendous amount of material coming down into the water, the sediment. And at that time, City of Longview's water intake system was at the Cowlitz, out of Cowlitz County, or Cowlitz River. And we were getting the screens plugged up on a regular basis. And so the simple solution is backwash the springs, or to the screens to clean them out. And we got a notice from DOE that you can't do that because that was introducing foreign material back into the river. What? And at the time we had a a member of the council who had worked with DOE at Weyerhaeuser at the paper mills and was used to dealing with, the water quality expert. And he just said, let me see what he can do. And he came back several weeks later. He says, I've got them to sign off on the fact that we don't have to do that. And we were very, happy that, we were able to make that connection. The guy retired at the end of the month and the new person came in and reversed the whole thing. And we actually had to collect the sediment and take it to the landfill. Yeah. And I guess rates went up. Yeah. Crazy. So rules-
Anyway, that's just a story on. You
We
need
do
to
that
pay
all the
attention to
time.
other, yeah. And now we got till 10 till, so we'll open for public comment. Because I see you raising your hand, Flo, so come on up.
Okay. This probably doesn't sound that great, but there was an old saying about sometimes the penalty is less than the restriction. I'm not wording that correct, but what if they ignored? What is the penalty for ignoring that agency? I mean, what authority do they have? Can they levy a fine? Do they have that authority? Maybe you just kind of go, forget it, and tell them just to, turn around and go ahead and do what you want to do. Maybe, maybe that's a solution as well. I think sometimes some of these agencies think they have more authority than they actually have.
They have authority only as long as we
We allow it.
obey. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I would tell you of a very successful resistance move, but I don't want to expose that to a problem. So I won't, but
Darn.
I like your approach.
Well, I don't mean to stir up trouble, but honestly, like you said, I mentioned it before. I had to purchase a hot water heater. I did not know that the new ones come with a little box on top that if they figure that the power grid is in jeopardy or whatever, they can turn my hot water heater off, by, I don't know, remote control. And this is my hot water heater. What if I have a generator and I'm totally fine, which we do?
That's
I mean,
why
that's
you need to go
control.
to engineering school so you can undo it.
Well, we need to do that. Okay.
Or is it green?
But what I'm saying is sometimes I think there's just too much
It-
control.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. I'm just pointing out to you that we spend a lot of time watching elections and trying to get whoever we believe will do the best job. We need to spend as much time or more on some of these departments and how they grow. And
Then how do you do that?
Wait,
I mean,
well,
we're willing to do it if you can show us how to, because these people are not elected.
that's where I disagree a little bit with the chairman, and that in fact it is an election issue. Not here as much as in the legislature.
right.
And there are some people like Jim Walsh who will stand on his head to get things changed. And then others, you never hear from them because they're going along with everything. Oh, well, we need to do this. Oh, well, of course, that kind of nonsense.
Well, I'm against control. I would help.
So Flo, it's actually more insidious than what we've talked about. This is a one-party state. We have two political parties, but in terms of elections, the population is in Puget Sound and they vote Democrat. And until the Republicans figure out how to break through, we're going to be at their mercy. I tend to favor a separate state, but that's a little bit more complicated.
Although what you said is a fair statement, at some levels, it's difficult for me to tell a priori by looking at the votes or the write-ups. I don't know who's in which party. That hence the term the uniparty.
Well, I opened up a little bit of can of worms, but I just
Yeah.
found it one of those things where I just went, geez, We're
So-
open for public comment. We have a few minutes till Board of Health, if you have anything. If not, we'll just, we'll adjourn and then fire back up when Board of Health comes in. Okay, we will adjourn and we'll be back with Board of Health in about 12 minutes.